City of Stevens Point Plan Commission meeting, recorded Monday, June 1, 2020.
I will call the Plan Commission meeting to order. I don't see, yes, there's Maria. Maria, you are able to unmute yourself, and if you could call the roll, please. Maria, are you available?
Mayor, I can call the roll as well.
Oh, why don't you go ahead and do that, Director? Oh, Maria's coming on.
I got it, yep.
Okay.
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Oh.
Arnson.
Oh, he's not.
You're muted.
Here I am. No,
I'm
okay.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Haynes.
Here.
Hoppy.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Mayor Weeza, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Everyone is present. A few of the ground rules, just as a reminder, some of us are pretty new to these online meetings, and I appreciate everyone's patience as we kind of muddle through everything that is in turmoil here because of COVID-19. So I would ask that you stay muted unless you have, unless you're speaking. That's going to eliminate some of the background noise. And if you have a comment, there are several ways. Not everybody is on video, but if you are on video, you could raise your hand or wave your hand, something along those lines, and I will try and call on you. If it allows, you may unmute yourself and make a comment. If nobody else is speaking, just be cognizant of how many people we have in here. And be respectful. Remember that if you have cameras on, this is all being recorded and live streamed. This is a public record. So let's be respectful of everybody's time on here. And we will try and go a little bit slower because of the environment that we're dealing with. If you are speaking as a member of the public, please state your name and address clearly for the record. So when we go through and take the minutes, we have an idea of everybody that's here and speaking. Let me see. Ryan, I was going to introduce Adam. Is Adam on the call?
Yes, he is on the call.
He must be on. Oh, there he is. Gotcha. So I want to take a moment before we go to introduce all of the commissioners to Adam Kuhn. He is our new associate planner in Ryan's office, and he hasn't quit yet. So I guess that's a good thing.
No, I haven't.
Adam, you want to introduce yourself and say hi, give us a little background on where you're from and where you come to us from?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name, as the mayor mentioned, is Adam Kuhn. I am originally from Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, which is about a 2-hour drive or so to the southeast of here. Undergrad, I went to UW La Crosse, where I double majored in economics and public administration. I recently graduated from UW Milwaukee about 3 weeks ago or now, and I obtained my master's in urban planning and my master in public administration. And past work experience that I've had before signing up here with the City of Stevens Point was I was a planning intern for the Village of Grafton and a planning intern for the Mississippi River Regional Planning Commission out in La Crosse. And yeah, so I'm super jacked to be working here for the City of Stevens Point. Even these last 3 weeks have been pretty awe-inspiring of the different types of tasks and projects that I've been working on, and I'm excited to hopefully in the weeks and months ahead to meet all of you in person. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much, Adam. And with that, we will move on to our agenda items. The first item on your agenda, number 2, is the report of the May 4th meeting of the Plan Commission, page 6, commissioners. Director, anything to add?
Outside of friendly amendments, no, there's nothing additional to add.
Okay. Commissioners, those minutes and actions are before you. What are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor, I would move approval.
That was Commissioner Cooper.
I'll second it. It's Anna Haynes.
Seconded by Commissioner Haynes. Any discussion on the minutes and actions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, unmute your, everyone unmute yourself for the commissioners right away. And all the commissioners in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Those minutes and actions then are approved. Item number 3 is on page 12 of your packet, commissioners, and that is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Mihir Sangani, and I apologize if I got the name wrong, representing NM Equities LLC as Knights Inn for a conditional use permit for a partial multiple dwelling complex within units 31 through 42 of the subject property, consistent with Chapter 23 of the premise at 3421 Church Street. Director.
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the commission. Before you tonight, as part of the first public hearing, the City of Stevens Point, our zoning department has been, I guess, cracking down, for lack of a better term, on multifamily dwellings that have historically been utilized as a hotel. The Knights Inn and the Point Motel are the two prime examples. It is illegal to operate a multifamily dwelling within the B4 zoning district without the proper conditional use permit. So as part of this, city staff several months ago met with both the Point Motel and the Knights Inn to tell them or try to encourage them to come into compliance. And so as part of this, the Knights Inn has graciously agreed to work with us as much as possible to bring their property into compliance with the city zoning code. So that's why before you tonight, 10 units within the Knights Inn would go from transient rentals, which is less than 6 months, which is typically allowed within hotel and motel uses, to more permanent. We know as a city that this is already occurring. This is just an attempt to bring these properties into compliance. So as I mentioned earlier, multiple dwelling units, 3 or more are conditional uses within the B4 commercial district, which requires plan commission approval. We've been working with both Knights Inn and Point Motel to bring them the partial use of the property, which is long-term housing, into compliance with the code, and that there are on this site, ironically, 3 existing apartments that were actually constructed when the hotel was constructed between 1955 and 1956. Additionally, a property manager lives on site at the apartments. So as some of you might know, the Knights Inn is actually made up of 2 buildings. There is the longer L-shaped building it's on the north side of the property, and then there's a smaller square one that's closer to the center of the property. This would be for the L-shaped one, units 31 through 42. You can see 43 and 44 are already existing apartments. Down here on the, I guess, we'll call it the south side, or the bottom here is where Division Street is, just to give you a little bit of a perception of the location of the proposed use. We did review the findings. We do believe that within the conditions that are identified within the within the staff report, that this property should be approved with the conditions. Our biggest thing here, and this is kind of an odd situation because it's already been utilized as a long-term dwelling for quite some time, is we really want to bring the property into compliance with today's building code for longer-term occupancy. Think about when you go to a hotel or motel, you typically don't have you typically don't have a kitchen unit within it, things of that nature. And so there are some safety things, adding kitchen units, adding, fire suppression systems or additional fire safety components to it, which is really important to the building and fire departments because of the existing use of the property. So we do identify that they need to hire an architect or engineer and submit plans to change the occupancy of the hotel from hotel transient use to a more permanent use. They shall apply for applicable building permits, and that we should be able to review the more or less permanent multifamily dwelling housing within 12 months or by July 1, 2021 to verify that the proposed use has not detrimentally impacted the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, would recommend that we hold the public hearing, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the commission may have going forward.
Okay, at this point, before we open the public hearing, are there any commissioners that need any clarification on the request?
Mayor, I have a question. Alder Kneebone here.
Yes.
Well, actually, it's for Director Karnowski. Is there any way that we could add some landscaping requirements? That is just a huge wasteland of asphalt out there. We may not be able to, but I'd like to consider the possibility if we can. Thanks.
Okay. That actually isn't. We'll get to that and have the director address that after we go through the public hearing. So again, any questions that for clarification of the project before we open the public hearing? Commissioner Hoppy.
Commissioner Hoppy, just how many total units? So beyond the 31 through 42, how many total units then, or how many other units that are just hotel related?
I believe there's close to 60 units.
Okay.
Anything else from the commissioners? Okay, before I declare the public hearing open, I want to let everybody know what it is, because there's a few unfamiliar faces here. I just want to make sure everybody understands the process that we go through. With the public hearing, the commission is accepting public testimony. It's not a question and answer session. However, if you do have questions, you are free to ask those questions. We will make note of them and try and get those answered after the legal part of the public hearing has taken place. So public hearing will allow you to provide testimony on the request at hand, and then after we close the public hearing, we no longer accept that public hearing testimony and we deliberate whatever the request might be. We've got several public hearings on the agenda tonight, so I just wanted to state that before we begin. I will call for the public comments during the public hearing 3 times each as required by law. Let me see if I can do this now. There is not an unmute option. So it looks like we can allow the participants to unmute themselves. I will, I just muted everybody, so I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request is urged to raise your hand, get in touch with me somehow. There's a virtual hand you can do, or I will go through each member that's listed that is not a commissioner and ask you individually, just so we make sure and get all of the people who may want to speak on a particular topic. Is there anyone at this point that wishes to offer testimony on this request? Okay, let me try this. Ryan, do you have the ability, since you started the meeting, to unmute? That should be an option here, to unmute everyone, but I don't see it.
Let me take a look.
I'm just going to go through, I guess, each one individually, because I think there's some people that may not be able to unmute themselves if they came in via phone. So let me try this. It's not seeming to work. Okay, well, I have an option here to allow participants to unmute themselves. I'm enabling that. So you are now able to unmute yourself, or you should be. The chat room is also open. If you're connected and you need to chat a question, you can certainly do that. I'm monitoring that. I will call a second time for anyone wishing to offer testimony on this to provide that now. And for the third time, anyone wishing to offer testimony? Seeing nothing in the chat room. Making sure people have an ample amount of time to try and get my attention if they need to. I see no one else for the third time. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, the public hearing is still open. Okay, seeing no one wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed and we will bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Anyone? Can't hear anything? I'm seeing weird things. You can't.
There, okay, all right. You had us all locked out on mute. So this is Commissioner Hoppy. I would move approval with staff recommendations as outlined.
Okay, yeah, you should, commissioners and anyone listening, you should be able to unmute yourself. I see Commissioner Arnson shaking his head. Do you see the mute button? There you go.
Yeah,
you just
now I
unmuted
go.
yourself.
No, before it was telling me that I wasn't allowed to unmute myself.
Okay.
So something.
Anna,
But
can you try it again now?
So we're good, right?
It should be good. I need a second on that motion.
I will second.
Thank you. Before we go any further, Commissioner Haynes says she still can't unmute. I don't understand it. I knew why you didn't do it before because there was an option there.
Worked. I just got a message.
Okay. Alder Jennings, you want to try it again?
That time it worked. Thank you.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it must have taken a second to refresh when I allowed everyone to unmute themselves. Anyway, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use as requested with the conditions outlined by the Community Development Department.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes, Alder Kneebone.
Alder, I'm sorry. I couldn't unmute there for a while. Can we add landscaping to that? Is that now the time to ask this question before
that would be. Director, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I hope you can see it here, but this is the property itself. You can see the outline. My apologies. It's in the packet, but not on the PowerPoint itself. So, you know, now's the time to request it. Staff would have to look at the requirements and determine whether or not they would need any additional landscaping. My reasonable suspicion is that, yes, they would need something. So it could be appropriate to state, okay, yes, we would like some additional landscaping consistent with the city zoning code. You know, looking at the outline of the property here, you've got some opportunity down here on the west side adjacent to the manager's home, and then a little bit up on this corner. So they are limited. Now, if they were to redo the parking lot, things of that nature, we do have some additional landscaping requirements. So at some point they will need to add additional landscaping on the lot itself. But it is important to notice that this lot was split a few years ago when the property sold, where what is now Rookie Sports Pub and the restaurant are on its separate parcel, and the hotel and motel are on their own standalone parcel. So we do have some limitations, but we can definitely look into it and require it as consistent with the city zoning code.
Yeah, I was thinking, if nothing else, some raised planters with something green in there to try to break up that asphalt for the people that might be living there long term. So great, thank you.
So Alder Kneebone, if you want to make that part of the motion, you appropriately would be a motion to amend the conditional use and add a condition that the developer or applicant work with city staff to incorporate landscaping in accordance with the current city guidelines.
Okay. Well, then I would like to amend the motion to include having city staff review the need for landscaping in compliance with zoning requirements. Is that stated?
I think that'll work.
Correctly?
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Haynes. Now, only on the amendment. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Anyone from the public, unmute yourself and provide your comments on the amendment only. Okay, I see no one, nothing in the chat room, no virtual hands raised, no physical hands raised. So I will call the vote only on the amendment. We are only voting on the amendment, not the overall conditional use. And I'm going to take a voice vote. So commissioners, if you are in favor of the amendment, please signify now by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, so now we have a motion to approve the conditional use as amended. That has been seconded already. Any discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing none. Maria or Ryan, would one of you please call a roll?
Sure, I can. Just give you 1 second. Okay, Weeza.
Yes.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Yes.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Yes.
Hoppy.
Yes.
Rice.
Yes.
7-0.
Thank you very much. That is adopted. Item number 4 is on page 28 of your packet, and that's a public hearing and action on a request from Daniel Drzezinski for a conditional use permit to construct a front porch setback 15 feet 6 inches from the Franklin Street right-of-way under the traditional neighborhood overlay zoning district. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. So the applicant is requesting to construct a front porch at 516 Franklin Street with a setback of 15 feet 6 inches from the Franklin Street right-of-way. The property is zoned R3 single and 2 family residence district. However, it does fall within the traditional neighborhood development overlay district. Within the R3 underlying zoning district, there is a required 25 setback for single family dwellings from the Franklin Street right-of-way. Porches with roof structures are considered part of the dwelling and are subject to the 25-foot setback. However, because the applicant's property falls within the traditional neighborhood overlay district, they may have a reduced setback of 12 feet from the street right-of-way if a conditional use permit is approved. Hence why we are here tonight to have this discussion. It has been noted that this property has been used as a duplex. However, they are currently the sole occupants and use it as a single family dwelling. Here are some photos. This is the front of the home. The porch will be essentially on this side of the house, come across the front of it. As you can see here, this is the top-down view. Here's the proposed porch along the existing home, the 15.5-foot setback from the Franklin Street right-of-way. Here are some additional architectural drawings. Will match the home's historic features. Actually, it's probably one of the nicer porches I think I've ever seen. So whenever you're done, you can come to my house and work on my porch, but that's not relevant. Again, the findings do indicate that the traditional neighborhood overlay zoning code does allow a 12-foot setback from the street yard setback. They would be required to obtain proper building permits that as long as they get the conditional use. So staff does recommend approval as provided that all applicable building permits are applied for and obtained prior to commencement of construction, and staff shall have the authority to approve minor changes to the site plan. Nothing too earth-shattering here. Staff, again, would recommend approval with those conditions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any clarifying questions before I open this public hearing?
Commissioner Hoppy again. I know I saw in the applicant that the original building, when it was built in the 19th century, had a porch. I don't know if I've seen a photo of that, but I'm wondering if the applicants have referenced that original porch in their. Yeah, I agree. It looks beautiful with the current wraparound porch that they're suggesting. So. Just a question of as a historian, if it
and Commissioner, we'll get there after the public hearing, if that's okay.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Any questions about the request before we open the public hearing? Okay. At this point, I will open the public hearing and declare that open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, please unmute yourselves and state your name and address for the record, and you provide them that testimony.
Bob Weir, 727 2nd Street.
Bob, I got a letter from you, so I assume that since you're speaking, you'll cover everything in that email then?
I intend to, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
What I just heard from the director, I don't know. The question came to when I looked over the packet. My biggest concern was, and it's in an email which I believe was distributed to the commissioners, the next to last paragraph where I quoted right out of the ordinance, these conditional use setback requirements shall be applied only to single family uses. And the assessor's data sheet shows the residence as a 2-family. And on the application form that the applicant filled out, handwritten on page, I believe it's 35 of the packet, something like that. He wrote residence/duplex. Family lives on first floor and part of the second. So it indicated to me that it's not a single family residence, it's a duplex, right? And being assessed as a duplex, and on official city records, it's a duplex. So I sent an email to Director Kanowski. Obviously, he replied to me and got a copy to you, and I believe you distributed to the commissioners both of those emails. Some of the information that the director has in the packet, one thing being that the ordinance was created in 2014 on the staff report is inaccurate. The ordinance was created in 2005. I was there at those meetings. And if you go back in the city records, Plan Commission of October 6th, 2005, had number one, the creation of a traditional neighborhood overlay district ordinance. And in the minutes, and the minutes are not transcripts, obviously, but in the minutes, it said John Gardner noted the reason for applying this only to single family is because of the need to encourage single family units, especially in the older parts of the town with the problems that so forth. Mayor Gary Westcott, who was chairing the meeting at the time, again, reading directly from the minutes, Chairman Westcott noted the language before you clearly reflects the work we have done at past meetings and is consistent with the consensus of past meetings. And then there were some other comments by Lois Feldman Lois Feldman moved and they passed it. At the same meeting, I, representing Habitat for Humanity, had requested a conditional use permit for Habitat for Humanity to construct a home at the corner of 3rd Street and Franklin. At the time, I was a volunteer with Habitat, but I was the construction supervisor for Habitat for all the homes, the 10 or so homes that were built during my tenure there. That conditional use permit was recommended for approval by the Plan Commission and then subsequently went to the council. And on October 17th of 2005, the council took up the conditional use ordinance, creating 23.02 (1) (H) RTDD traditional neighborhood overlay district. That was approved then to create the ordinance again, October 17th of 2005. And the following month, in November 21st of 05, I believe October of November 21st, 2005. The council acted on the request for Habitat for Humanity to construct a home using the traditional neighborhood overlay district at 835 3rd Street. The following day, I went down and I picked up the building permit for that house, and obviously it's still there. So my biggest concern is if this is in fact a single family, then it would be legal to issue the conditional use permit. If, however, it's a two-family or a duplex, it would not comport with the requirements of the city ordinance to issue a conditional use permit because of the fact that the ordinance says the TDD only applies to single family. So if it's goes on to council, I would suggest that if, as the director now states, that it is a single family, although the documentation says otherwise, that an additional condition be placed on that property that it will continue to be used as a single family only, not converted back to a duplex. That's my issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ware. The public hearing remains open. I see Alderperson Jennings wishing to speak.
I was just going to, excuse me, speak in favor of this application. This is one of the houses in Stevens Point that I really like. And I obviously am really excited whenever I see a house be converted back to single family from what was probably a rental before. So I'm very excited about these drawings and look forward to seeing the finished product.
Thank you very much. Public hearing remains open. Alderperson Makira Zarazua, that district.
Yes, Kathy and Dan live in District 4, and I just want to say, like, this house is beautiful, and seeing how much care they're taking with you know, bringing the character really out of the house, and the fact that they're looking at doing this porch that helps it return to its original style, I think really is just adding to what an asset it is. And right there on Franklin, you know, it's right by the park, and I think it really is a great image for our neighborhood. So I am in support of approving this.
Thank you very much. Looks like the applicants have some public comments. Applicants, Dan Drzinski, please state your name, and I see your wife's there as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dan and Kathy Drzinski at 516 Franklin. So, Ginger. Yeah, you know, this house has actually been in my family since the 30s. It was my great aunt's, and she gave it to my grandmother. And so my father lived here as a teenager, going to high school at P.J. Jacobs. When my grandmother passed away, my dad inherited it and bought out the other 3 shares from his siblings. So my dad, since 73 or so, has been the owner and landlord of the house, and many of us family members have lived here in the apartments over the years, including me. But I would also add that when I was born, the first 2 years of my life, I lived here with my family, and there were 5 kids. My uncle, my dad's brother, lived upstairs with his family. So it's been a family home for many decades. And now lightning struck us last spring, and we decided to buy the old place. But because we wanted, you know, a beautiful old home. This was originally the Kopp's family original home, and it did have a 3-sided wraparound porch. I haven't come across any pictures, but my aunt remembers it. So we care a lot about this house. We plan to live here the rest of our lives. which is at least 50 or 60 more years. And we are trying to, bring back its old glory. And I think it'll be an enhancement for the neighborhood, and we sure will enjoy it. And so I hope that we can get the permit to go ahead with our porch.
Thank you very much. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. With that, I will declare the public hearing closed and return it to the commission. Director Konoski, I'd like you to speak a little bit about the comments that Mr. Ware made in regards to single and or multifamily.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, it's a really intriguing conversation in and of itself, and what the use of the property is. And I think that there's some, I don't want to say evidence, but case law in the past is, well, what's the use of the property at the time of the application? If the use of the property is single family, although it's assessed as, remember that assessment is separate from use. Okay, so you can live in a duplex, but not rent the upstairs, or you can live in both units as a family unit, and it would thereby, through the zoning code, be considered a single family. Mr. Weir may disagree with that, and that's okay. But as far as the interpretation of the city is, and as we try to encourage more multifamily or two-family dwelling units to be reverted back into single family for the sheer sake of neighborhood stability, I think that we want to be erring on the side of leniency in these types of situations. The use of the property itself is not changing via the conditional use permit. I mean, it's still being utilized as a single family home. The applicants, although they have identified within the application that it's historically been utilized as a duplex, have also indicated that they currently use the upstairs as more or less their office space and as a professional area for them to work from home. And so staff does not have the concern that Mr. Weir did, and would recommend approval again. I have a little bit of concern about placing a condition on this conditional use permit stating that it cannot be reverted back to single family or back to a duplex, because it's still R3 zoning, which allows for single and two families. So I would advise the commission just to focus on the request at hand and not get too far outside of the lane as it relates to the use of the property.
Thank you, Director. This is just down the road from me. I'm in the 700 block, so wave when you drive by. But I can tell you that this is a nice house in the neighborhood, and reestablishing a porch that had existed there regardless of the use. Nobody driving by sees that there's three unrelated people living there. So it's being used as a family home, and I think it's going to increase the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and I will move approval of the conditional use as presented.
I'll second Mayor Alder Kneebone.
Seconded by Alder Kneebone. Any discussion from the commission? Any final comments from the audience? I see the applicants raise their hand. Mr.
Yeah,
Guzman,
I would just also, as part of the discussion, just to point out that we won't be any closer to the sidewalk than the two adjacent homes immediately to the east, and pretty much all the homes on the north side of our block. So we're not really going to be any different than any of the other homes.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Anna has one.
Commissioner Haynes.
Ryan, it just makes me think that, for duplexes, why would we not want them to improve them? And so I'm just wondering if it's an opportunity to, even though it's a scary
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile if we're going to be stating that because most of the properties that fall within the T&D, traditional neighborhood overlay district, are zoned R3, and that does allow single and two family uses. So, you know, Bob and I had some good conversations about what the purpose was, and I appreciate his history because I don't have the institutional knowledge that some folks on this body and in the public do. But I think it's worthwhile to kind of reopen that and explore changing it. We are continuing to look at a larger rewrite of our zoning code, wherever that's at. You know, we're still trying to get our new zoning administrators' ears wet. So, we're working on it, but it's something to definitely look into.
Right, and that's definitely a topic for another discussion. We're only dealing with the conditional use at hand right now. But any of the commissioners or any members of the public can contact the director's office to provide input later. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, we have a motion to approve the conditional use request as presented. Commissioners, unmute yourselves, and Director, would you please call the roll?
Weeza?
Yes.
Kneebone?
Aye.
Arnson?
Aye.
Cooper?
Aye.
Haynes?
Aye.
Hoppy?
Aye.
Rice?
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted. Item number 5 is on page 45 of your packets, Commissioners, and that is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Dan St. Pierre, representing the Stevens Point Area School District, for a conditional use permit consistent with Chapter 23 and all the subs provided there to construct a gymnasium / lunchroom addition and enclosing an existing overhang at the premise of 600 Maria Drive, also known as Madison Elementary School. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. So the applicant is seeking to construct a 9,600 square foot addition to the west side of the school of Madison Elementary off of Maria to essentially separate the existing shared location for student lunches and physical education. This is part of the referendum package that was passed in the last few years. And then they would also be framing in the existing main entrance overhang to provide for additional security. So essentially, because the public schools and public elementary schools are a conditional use in the RLD, and as you might know, our zoning code essentially zones up and zones down. This isn't a conditional use within the R2 single family residential district in which this is located. So as you can see on your computer screens here, this is the existing west entry perspective. This is looking southeast, actually. The gymnasium would be added at this location. From this side, you would see that they would do an addition on the north side. It's a pretty decently sized lot. There are no setback concerns or any impervious surface concerns from city staff. I mean, they've got over 40 acres there, and it's a very nice, large lot, so no serious concerns from the city. This is the other proposed. They would be enclosing this overhang here, providing for additional secured entrance. They are not going any closer to the street right-of-way than what's already existing, so there are no setback concerns there as well. Here are the findings that were included as part of the packet. Nothing terribly concerning from staff. We believe that they have the adequate access to the site and that the use is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. We would recommend approval provided that all applicable building permits are applied for and obtained, that the exterior facade improvements must match or be a complement to the existing structure, and city staff shall have the authority to approve minor changes to the site plan. Again, staff would recommend approval with those conditions. Would open it up for any questions after the public hearing.
Thank you, Director. Before we open the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions for the commissioners in regards to the project at hand? Nope. Okay, then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request from Madison Elementary School, please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, or you have the ability to chat as well, and I can relay the questions verbally. The public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one giving any indication that they want to speak, no one had unmuted themselves, and nothing in the chat room, I will declare the public hearing closed and bring it back to the commissioners for consideration. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
Mayor, this is Cooper. I would move approval of the request as presented with staff recommended conditions.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Haynes will second.
Seconded by Haynes. Further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I will ask the director to call the roll. The motion is to approve the conditional use request as presented.
Weeza.
Yes.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted. Item number 6 is on page 67 of your packets, commissioners. And that is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from Dan St. Pierre, representing Stevens Point Area School District, for a conditional use permit to construct a lunchroom and kitchen addition at the premise of 1800 East Avenue, which is known as Jefferson Elementary School. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Similar to last request, this is an addition, smaller in size, at 4,800 square feet, to the southwest corner of the property to add a cafeteria and kitchen facility on the west side of the Jefferson Elementary School. Probably the biggest thing that should be noted here is that the addition is proposed to be 4.4 feet from the wide avenue right-of-way, not meeting the typical 20-foot setback that's required within the zoning district. However, one of the good things about our zoning code, it does allow the Plan Commission and Common Council to approve reduced setback, provided that does not negatively impact the surrounding neighborhoods for public facilities like schools. And so because that the proposed addition is actually further set back than the existing school itself by about another 1.5 feet, staff didn't have any major concerns with the proposed setback. Again, the property is zoned R3, single and two-family residential, and similar to the last request, this does require a conditional use permit because of the changes to the property. On your computers right now, you can see outlined in blue is the existing building, and the southwest corner, I guess, is the addition, and there's a loading dock here off of Wide Avenue to the school. Actually, you can see here too, it's kind of hard to see, but actually this addition is further set back from this is Wide Avenue here, Jefferson here, is actually further set back than the closest point, which is this corner here. This is roughly 3 feet. This is a 4.5 foot setback. So again, you're not going any closer to the street right of way than this corner here. So staff didn't have any major concerns with the setback. The proposed exterior of the building will complement the existing school. You can see this is the existing facility on Wide Avenue. Looking at it, this is the addition. The findings, staff believes the 14 findings are consistent with approving the conditional use permit as outlined within your agenda packet. We would recommend approval of the conditional use permit, again, with as long as all applicable building permits are applied for and obtained prior to commencement of construction. The exterior facade must match or complement the existing structure. That the Plan Commission and Common Council authorize a reduced setback along Wide Avenue right of way not to be less than the existing setback of the school, and that staff shall have the authority to approve minor changes to the site plan.
Thank you, Director. Any clarifying questions for the Director before I open the public hearing?
I do. Haynes.
Yep.
So the driveway that's there, is it remaining and it's becoming a loading dock? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so the existing driveways actually, if you look on your screen right about here, they are going to be adding a new loading dock area off of Wide Avenue. This currently serves as an entry point. However, they do have a gate and access point to the elementary school's playground off of, I'm blanking on the street here, yeah. And so They are adding this loading dock because they do have the kitchen facilities that they're adding to the school here, but you know, there will be less traffic coming in and out. I believe this was historically used as bus parking and emergency or plow access to the playground. And
my other question, like Mary, is on landscaping. I know some landscaping is going away, so are they replacing it somehow, some way?
There is not a proposed replacement of the landscaping. They are redoing some of the playground itself. I believe that this area down here is going to be not impervious. I think there's going to be some additional pervious types of, I don't know, not grasses, but rubber, things of that nature. They are not adding any additional landscaping as far as I can tell. But the applicant is on the phone. They should be able to answer that question as well.
And we will after the public hearing. Okay, with that, I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, please unmute yourself or signify to me somehow that you wish to speak. Chat room is also available. Public hearing remains open. President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is around the corner from my house. It's in my district. I just wanted to mention that in looking at, this is a really compact site. You know, Jefferson School is very unique. It's an urban school, not a lot of space, outdoor space. And I think what the architects did here to accomplish the goal of the school district was really quite novel, and I appreciate their work, still allowing for you know, a lot of outdoor space while still accomplishing the goals. And as for the landscaping, yeah, there's a few shrubs, there's some spirea out there, but they're not well maintained. So, you know, green is one thing, but well maintained is quite another thing. So I think that the architects have done a fine job in a very compact space. And I heard nothing from any of my neighbors, anyone who received any of the correspondence. So thank you.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third and final time, public hearing is open. Seeing that no one else wishes to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. And I see that the applicant was on here. Mr. St. Pierre, would you care to address the concern of Commissioner Haynes?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so as kind of mentioned before, the building addition itself is going over what used to be an existing access to the back playground area. So there are only a little bit of shrubs that are being removed as part of this proposal. So there are no additional landscaping being proposed as part of this plan.
Can I ask one other question? There are large trash bins out there, so where will they go instead?
Yep, there's an area that we have shown on that site plan. I don't know if that can be, Ryan can put that back up, but there's a small enclosure that we're going to put with screening to hide those trash enclosures from the public.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
It's Commissioner Hoppy. I would move approval with staff recommendations.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Arntzen. Further discussion? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves and I will have the director call the roll.
Lisa.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arntzen.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Well, that is unanimous. That is approved. Item number 7 is on page 86 of your packet, and that is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from David Lewis in regards to rezoning a property at 3041 Michigan Avenue from B4 commercial to M1 light industrial. Director.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the commission. Tonight before you is a rezoning request to rezone a property from B4 commercial zoning to the M1, which is our light manufacturing zoning district. The proposed use of the property is to be a type of arcade manufacturer, fabricator, repairer, type of a user. This is an existing business that's currently located in the greater Mosinee area that would be relocating to the existing Durloom flooring facility, which currently or was formerly used as a showroom office and storage flooring with semi-drop-off materials on a regular basis. Again, the property is currently zoned B4 commercial. It's bounded to the north by M1 and B4. So our M1 again is our light manufacturing. B4 is our general commercial. M2 zoning to the east. The city's, I'll call the historic industrial park is to the east of this proposed, the east of the subject property. And then B4 zoning to the south. To the west, you have R2 and R3 zoning. So kind of a unique area wherein you have some heavier uses. This is the future land use map. I'll see if I can find the next one here. Off of Wellsby, you do have Steel King, some really heavy manufacturing uses. You had a bit of a buffer with the B4 commercial before you transitioned off of Michigan Ave into the R2, R3 zoning districts, as opposed to on the south side, you had the residential abutting against the heavier manufacturing use. The city's future land use map did call this out for commercial office use. Staff believes that the existing use, the Durloom use was consistent with the B4 and the future land use. However, with the proposed use, there's no major concerns. We don't believe that this is anything close to what would be considered spot zoning, and that the future land use map could be easily amended to include this as a light industrial area. We believe that after consulting with the applicant that the M1 zoning was more consistent with what they were looking for in the use of the property than the B4. And again, the M1 district is intended to act as a buffer between heavy manufacturing uses and commercial or high density residential uses. Here's some photos you can see, especially on the east side of the property. You do have some industrial style buildings. You've got the showroom floor along Michigan Avenue. The underlying zoning and the findings of the rezoning staff believes are consistent with the code. And given that, again, you're adjacent to heavier manufacturing uses and a residential area, staff didn't believe that there was a major concern with the rezoning itself. Per the applicant, all of the manufacturing or fabrication of the arcade systems would occur inside, so there would be no outdoor storage. There would be minimal noise outside of the property lines because everything is being done inside. Therefore, staff would recommend approving the rezoning request from B4 to M1 light industrial.
Thank you, Director. Before we get started with the public hearing, again, any clarifying questions for from the commissioners?
Commissioner Rice.
Yes.
Just curious, I guess, about the possibility of just extending a conditional use permit for the intended use as opposed to the rezoning. Thinking about potential future issues if we rezone, you know, what potential permitted uses then do we allow, and do we want to allow all potential M1 permitted uses in that location, given the proximity to some of that, you know, single family housing?
So staff did look at the possibility of doing the conditional use permit as opposed to a complete rezoning. And within our findings, we didn't believe that the use would be either permitted or conditional use within the B4. remember the B4s are general commercial, so more of the highway style or highway 10 style development. It's really a retail development. It's not really intended to be utilized for a light and a manufacturing use such as the proposed use. We did look at that as kind of a different way to approach it. Didn't believe that would fit within the B4 zoning because they are manufacturing and fabricating these arcade or furniture pieces is really what we base it off of, and did require that they go through the rezoning process. You do open up the uses of the property, but again, given the surrounding uses and the historical industrial uses that are east of the existing property, staff didn't think that it was a huge concern to rezone it from B4 to M1. Additionally, and I'll bring this up again, the properties to the north are zoned M1. Let me bring this up here. And so you already do have, this was the former Hoffman Hobbies, the vet clinics up here. Those could be utilized for lighter manufacturing uses as well. And so we didn't believe that it would have any further of a negative impact on the neighborhood if you were to rezone the property from B4 to M1.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the commissioners before I open the public hearing? Okay, with that, I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request, please unmute yourself or signify in some fashion that you wish to speak. The chat room is also open. Public hearing remains open. For the third time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners for consideration. Commissioners.
Alder Kneebone, I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
This is Cooper, second.
Seconded by Commissioner Cooper. Further discussion? Hearing none. Commissioners, please unmute yourselves, and Director, would you please call that roll?
Weeza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is approved. Item number 8 is on page 97 of your packets. And that is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from James Yakush for conditional use permit to construct 4 duplexes, 8 total units, consistent with Chapter 23, wherein there is proposed to be more than one principal structure on one parcel. The premises is an unassigned address lot on Doolittle Drive. Director.
Thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight is a proposal to do the first phase of a multi-phase project. This would be construction of 4 duplexes, 8 total units on an undeveloped piece of property north of Doolittle Drive. The property is currently zoned R4, multiple family 1 residential district. And as alluded to earlier, we typically don't allow more than one principal structure, one main building on one zoning lot, except for when Plan Commission approves a measure through a conditional use permit. The general site itself is about 1 acre in size. It's, again, the first phase of a multi-phase project. There's a proposed driveway that's roughly 400 feet, a private road more or less, to service the 4 duplexes and the 4 future duplexes. The duplexes themselves meet most of the setback requirements with the exception of the northernmost. We do need to require that they move that or shift that a little bit. It's only a few feet. We meet the 10-foot setback as outlined in the R4 multiple family zoning district. As you may recall, the last meeting we did approve a higher density for 2 families. We went from 12,000 square feet down to 8,000 square feet for 2 family requirements. staff doesn't consider the development itself, because there are 4 individual units as a apartment complex or a mixed-use facility, so there are no additional parking requirements. However, each duplex will have an attached 2-car garage and then roughly 30 feet of a driveway space. So we don't believe we don't believe parking is going to be a concern. Utilities and landscaping, there are additional requirements, and you're going to see a plethora of conditions as part of this conditional use permit that they provide additional information on utility and landscaping. Additionally, we are also going to require that the applicant install 2 water lines and 1 sewer line per 2 water lines and 2 sewer lines per duplex. Historically, we've allowed 2 water lines and 1 sewer line, but what we found out from doing that in the past and seeing it now is that sometimes these projects then get 0 lot lined, and then they get split and different ownerships, and then there's agreements and controversy over who's paying the water and sewer bills. So we said a requirement from here on out is going to be 2 water lines and 2 sewer lines, no matter the situation. Here's the overview, and I apologize that this photo isn't the greatest. It didn't transfer well in the PowerPoint, but here's Doolittle Drive. This is the first set of proposed 4 new duplexes, again, 8 total units. This is the property line itself. If you follow my laser pointer there, with the 4 duplexes, again, this is about a roughly acre in size. The next phase would likely be these 4 duplexes. They would have to come back for another conditional use permit as part of that. There's an existing fire hydrants down here on the south. Staff would require that they add 1 to 2 more fire hydrants within this property, just because this is a private roadway or private driveway that's 400 feet long. We typically don't like to go, I believe it's more than 300 or 350 feet from a fire hydrant in these situations. Here are some exterior renderings of the proposed duplexes. As you can see in the findings itself, staff does believe that they are consistent with the conditional use permit, provided that they meet a number of requirements. I'm going to go through these because I think it's important and because there's quite a few of them. So again, we mentioned earlier adjusting the side yard setback from the northernmost structure to meet the minimum 10-foot setback requirement. The developer needs to submit private utility plans to the utility department for review and approval. Again, they're going to be hooking into the city's system itself, and so we need to be reviewing those to ensure that not only our facilities can handle it, but that we're going to have adequate water pressure, and that they install 2 water and sewer lines per duplex. And then we also require on the initial that they would install the second phase of sewer and water lines as well. So they'd be stubbing in. They don't have to go in and disturb the proposed private driveway again in a year or 2 when they decided to do the next phase of the project. That they enter into utility and access agreement with the city to provide utility connections to the parcel consistent with fire and utility department requirements, and that there is an existing west sewer and water lateral on the property, that they abandon that properly. Moving on to the next page of conditions here, again, we talked about one water and 1 sewer lateral for each unit, so 2 per building. Install fire hydrants consistent with the fire department and utility department requirements. That they shall submit detailed drawings on the private refuse location on the property. Because it's not a single family or 2 family itself, they do not receive they don't receive city refuse services. So they do need to provide additional information on that. And that staff would review and approve those plans once submitted, consistent that they're consistent with the city's zoning code. Stop signs installed at the intersection of the private driveway and Doolittle Drive, consistent with our engineering specifics. That the applicant shall submit a landscaping plan consistent with our requirements. That the applicant shall submit proper stormwater management plans to city engineering for review and approval, and that this conditional use permit is only for the property that we're talking about tonight, and that specific parcel ID number has been identified. That anything else that they do, any future development, does have to come back to this body for additional approvals. Finally, we did have the fire department review it as well. They believe that the private access road needs to be a minimum of 20 feet in width to comply with their requirements. and that they shall do one of two things: either install a turnaround system on the north side of the property that would allow for the city's apparatus to make a complete turnaround in the event of a fire, or they may forego that turnaround system if all residents are provided with a fire suppression system. However, again, it's an either or, not both, either or. So it's probably cheaper for them to do the turning radius as opposed to sprinkling the entire each duplex, but that's up to the applicant themselves. A lot of conditions, a lot of items to discuss here, but staff would recommend approval with those conditions outlined. We believe that's consistent with the city's requirements, and we think that as long as all those conditions are met, that they would be falling within the 14 findings that we typically review when these types of proposed developments come through.
Thank you, Director. Any clarifying questions from the commissioners before we get started? Okay, then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony on this request is urged to unmute yourself, name and address for the record. You can raise your hand or in the chat room as well. Public hearing remains open. And for the third time, the public hearing is open. Seeing no one wishing to speak, I will declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, you have a recommendation from staff with a significant amount of conditions on it. What are your wishes?
Mr. Mayor, this is Cooper. I would move approval of the request with all the staff recommended conditions.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Hoppy would second.
Seconded by Hoppy. Discussion there. I see the fire chief on. Chief, since you sat patiently through everything, with the conditions as outlined, does the fire department have any concerns about the application?
Well, as long as they meet the conditions that Director Krowski talked about.
Thank you, sir. Okay. With that, then,
I have a question, if I could.
Absolutely,
Commissioner Ernson. Just looking at the drawing and the property line and the private drive, it looks like the property line is the center line of the private drive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the other property, the one to the east, isn't going to be developed yet? Is that the same property owner?
That's correct.
Is there any issue about approving plans incorporating an adjacent property that's not really part of this plan?
Because they're owned by the same individual, and because it's only the actual use of the property won't be occurring on the adjacent property, it'll be completely on the west side of the property. I don't have any concerns. We would likely additionally, I don't think it's a part of the conditions, but we would also require that they essentially record an access easement between the two properties, but essentially with themselves. So let's say the west side sold and the east side was retained by the current owner after it's been fully developed. There are still access, there's still ways for both properties to utilize the private driveway. So that's a good catch and should be added as a condition as well.
All right, you can phrase that condition for me?
And then the commissioner can make it in the form of a motion.
I would state a condition that a access agreement between the adjacent properties is recorded.
Okay, so Commissioner, I would need that in the form of a motion.
I would make a motion that a condition be added that includes an access agreement for the private road.
Okay,
something
we have a second to that motion.
I'll second. Alder Kneebone here.
Thank you very much. Again, this is only the amendment that we're going to be discussing now. Are there any comments on the amendment? Seeing none, I think we'll take that with a voice vote. Commissioners, if you would unmute yourselves. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The amendment is approved, and we go back to the original motion, which has already been seconded, to approve the conditional use now as amended. Any discussion there? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves, and Director, would you please call that roll?
Weeza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted. Item number 9 is on page 113 of your packet. And that's a request from the City of Stevens Point to amend Chapter 23 of the zoning ordinance of Revised Municipal Code. Said request adds sections 23.01, sub 13, sub I, and double I, relating to further regulations of tourist rooming houses, and amends sections 23.02 as listed to further clarify what zoning districts tourist rooming houses may operate as permitted or conditional uses. This has been discussed for a couple of months now, and Director, I would turn it over to you to recap everything.
Sure. So as folks might know, currently how the code is written that anyone within any zoning district in the city is allowed to operate a tourist rooming house that is non-owner occupied, provided that they receive a conditional use permit. That has caused some problems within our neighborhoods, and so this is a correction to this. And so the proposed ordinance amendment in front of you tonight, and that there is a public hearing for, was discussed pretty extensively at the last Plan Commission meeting as well, wherein we would amend the code to remove non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses in the low density R2 and R3 zoning districts. However, we would allow non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses in the R4, R5, B1, B2, B3, B4, and B5 zoning districts as a conditional use. So they would still have to come before this body after a public hearing and meet the 14 findings of a conditional use permit. However, owner-occupied would be allowed to be a permitted use in all zoning districts as long as the owner who rents out rooms to tourists is present during the time of the occupation. There is also additional language that includes regulations pertaining to proper licensing, collection of the proper taxes, evidence of business insurance, which was discussed at the last Plan Commission meeting, and that there are yearly records of each tourist rooming house and guidelines for the administrative denial of a tourist rooming house permit. Staff would recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amendment as found and outlined within your agenda packets. This is the actual changes. So you can see here, permitted uses in the C district, tourist rooming house where the owner permanently resides within the home or building is owner occupied, subject to the regulations within 230113I. 230113I is the one that we really go into the deep dive on the administrative side of this requirement. In this conditional use, we would strike tourist rooming houses where the owner does not permanently reside at the home or building. And then we would add it again, referencing back to 230113 II as part of it. And I will, again, this is just more administrative than anything else, but those are the recommended changes. I will, for whatever reason it was not included in this, I will pull up 230113 II as part of the packet itself, but the commissioners do have it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the folks may have.
Thank you, Director. As I said, both the council and the Plan Commission have talked about this at length, so hopefully we have a good product. Are there any comments from anyone in attendance other than commissioners, public? Alder Jennings?
Yes, even though we have been talking about this for a while, I keep coming back to this issue in part because I don't think we did I know I didn't do a very good job, and I don't think we collectively did a very good job of a deliberative process over this. But even with these adjustments, I guess I still have lingering questions about having TRHs in R3s at all, because they are a commercial enterprise and we do not allow nail salons or hotels in R3s. So basically, why are we allowing this commercial enterprise in the R3s? So zoning is about what happens where, and this is a zoning question, and it should not be a personal preference question, which has occupied a great deal of the conversation about this. So the more I learn and the more I think about this, it purely needs to rest with zoning. Did the zoning that accommodates this go through public review? Did this go through critical analysis? And I think in those cases, in terms of zoning, it did not. It failed in those. So just reiterating, this is a commercial enterprise. So why are we allowing this commercial enterprise in R3s when I can't have a nail salon? So if there could be a answer to that, I guess. Otherwise, I think what has been done is largely acceptable, but I still have this lingering question about commercial enterprises in R3.
Thank you, Alder Jennings. Director, you also had submitted to the commissioners a letter from Bill Sherrill in regards to this. You did send that out to everyone in the commission, correct?
Correct. And Mayor, if I could just receive some clarifying comments from Alder Jennings.
Absolutely.
The proposed ordinance amendment would remove non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses in the R3 zoning district. That I know that's what we've discussed. So essentially, the low density residential, which is our suburban areas, our R2, which is our single family areas, and our R3, which is our single and two family, would not be allowed to have non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses. But we would allow non-owner occupied tourist rooming houses in the R4, R5, and then all of our business districts as a conditional use. So I'm not, I guess for my own clarification, and I want the body to know that we are removing the non-owner occupied component in the R3 zoning district.
Yes, thank you. I understand that. I guess still just digging a little deeper into this, it's still, and I appreciate the work you've done on this. So yes, it will be owner occupied tourist rooming houses. Yet what remains is this is a commercial transaction. And that's what I don't believe has been thoroughly vetted. And that is a zoning question. And yet we've argued this in terms of, well, I really like staying at tourist rooming houses where no one's there, or I like staying out in these other areas. Again, I largely accept what's here, and yes, you and I have had conversations about this very thing, but I'm still just have this issue with the commercial component. And I don't know what Mr. Sherrill's letter says, so I don't know if that can be shared as well, since the public can't see that.
Okay, Director, do you want to maybe just recap the letter, or do you want to read through the whole thing, or do you want me?
Mayor, if you would read through it, I think that would be great. Find it real quick.
Mayor, your mic is off.
Perfect. Thanks. Can't figure out where to click. The commercial aspect of a tourist rooming house or an Airbnb, for some, yes, it's a solely commercial endeavor. But there are things going on right now in residential districts that are allowed in all types of home offices. There's one just on Franklin Street. She runs a woodworking shop out of her garage, and that's allowed to a certain extent. But I just wanted to make sure that we knew that we already have some commercial type endeavors going on in higher zoning districts in R2 and that sort of thing. The letter was dated June 1st to the Planning and Zoning Commission. A request from the city as the topic. I am unable to attend the meeting this evening and would like to submit my support for this revision in municipal code. As I stated at a previous meeting, as an existing tourist rooming house operator, this is not about restricting competition. I believe that commercial operations, in parentheses, which this activity is without a doubt, unparen, or end paren, need to be carefully planned and follow specific zoning with input and knowledge from neighboring properties. The land purchaser who buys a parcel of land next to a commercially zoned property has that information upon purchase. This is fair and equitable for all parties involved while still allowing rezoning options. If there remains a desire to accommodate tourist rooming houses as a commercial operation in residentially zoned areas for non-owner occupied transactions, I would think that there are overlay zoning opportunities that would allow such use while also providing input upfront from neighboring properties. This is something that could be planned and zoned appropriately to the neighborhood with possible maximum properties based on a percentage of lots or population. Sincerely, Bill Sherrill. Any other comments from anyone in attendance?
Yeah, Bob Weir.
Oh, Bob, thank you. Go ahead.
My great-grandson is trying to teach me how to use this iPad. And he's only 9 and I'm 90. I'm 80, but I'll be whatever. Bob Weir, 727 2nd Street. Just Tori beat me to the punch, I guess, and I wasn't going to speak as long as she has. This thing about tourist rooming houses. This only has come up more recently than I've been in the city, and you have too, Mike. But there were too many comments, I think, from decision makers of, I think it's great. I've stayed in boarding rooming or tourist rooming houses in the past. It's really fine, and this, that, and the other thing. And they were running a whole heck of a lot of this discussion about the long-range impact on neighborhoods. And I think as we go forward with any new concept or quote new concept, that there should be a little more reflection and in-depth discussion before these things get approved. And then all of a sudden now you have a problem and we have to start backtracking. So just the long-range planning and the long-range impact should be taken into consideration on any decision that either the Plan Commission and certainly the council makes. And that's it for now.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments?
Mayor, I have a comment, Alder Kneebone here. It looks to me like bed and breakfasts are already allowed in an R3, so isn't this basically kind of the same deal? Bed and breakfast is a vacation rental?
Typically, your bed and breakfasts are going to have an owner or at least some type of manager on premise to do the breakfast part, I guess. Director, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, they are regulated differently by the state. And so within a zoning code, they are regulated differently as well. In general, they've got a lot of the same concepts. The big difference is at a bed and breakfast, typically you're serving food and that does require a commercial kitchen. So that's the main difference. So we don't consider them to be equal in the eyes of zoning.
Thank you, Director. Did that answer your question, Alder Kneebone?
Well, I'm just kind of looking at some of the uses that you could have. You could have a dance studio, you could have a rest home. So for R3, I'm not quite sure I understand the issue with the vacation rental. So maybe just wondering and not necessarily a question. Thank you.
Okay. And, you know, if things change down the road, we can certainly reevaluate this, just as we've done multiple times. Any other questions from any attendees? Okay, commissioners, what are your wishes?
Mayor, this is a public hearing.
It did not state public hearing on the agenda. That was my confusion then. So are you 100% sure this is supposed to be a public hearing?
It was published as a public hearing.
That's okay. If it's incorrect on the agenda, that's my mistake. I'll take care of this. And we will just declare the public hearing open.
Correct.
We've had a few people speak already, so we've got that covered, but I will declare the public hearing.
Just for clarification, it was published as a public hearing. It just states request from the city of Stevens Point. It did not include public hearing and request, but it was published in our legal paper as a part of the public hearing.
Okay, so we met that part of the law at least. The agenda is just slightly inaccurate, and I apologize for that. But we will rectify that immediately and declare the public hearing open. Public hearing remains open.
Bob Weir, I made my comments already.
Yes, sir, I understand. Thank you. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. Seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Once again, I apologize for the confusion, but I believe everybody had ample opportunity to provide input, and I appreciate that. I know the director does as well. With the public hearing now closed, I will return it to the commission again for consideration.
Commissioner Hoppy, I would move approval of the proposed ordinance amendment as stated.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Cooper, I'll second.
Seconded by Cooper. Discussion there.
Just, I wanted to add one more thing. I know we've talked a lot about this, and maybe to Alderperson Kneebone's comment about allowing a lot for R3, but I'm guessing like a dance studio again, similar, or maybe even photo studio would be more of that owner occupied. Is the person's going to be living kind of in that house and then opening up maybe part of their property for so I mean, I think this is significantly better than what obviously the things we've gone through, so I commend the work on it and hope for approval.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves. Director, please call the roll.
Riza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Bryce.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted. Item number 10 is on page 119 of your packet. That is a request from Lineage SCS Wisconsin LLC for a site plan review of an expansion at the existing cold storage warehouse facility located within the planned industrial development zoning district at 5700 EM Cops Drive with the parcels identified. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Doby for spending his Monday evening with us patiently as the applicant. And Director, I will turn it over to you for a recap. This is not a public hearing.
Correct, not a public hearing. This is just a request for site plan review about Lineage Logistics, which operates the former cold storage, service cold storage facility. They are proposing a 122,276 square foot addition to their existing property along the east side of their existing facility with 19 additional loading docks and 18 staging stalls for semis. The additional of a similar appearance and function as the second and third phase expansion to the building. The majority of the addition will compromise of additional freezer space. There will be, again, 19 dock doors and 18 staging positions for semi-trucks. It will occur on two separate parcels, both owned by Lineage Logistics. as the council may recall, we did approve the amended development agreement for this project, I believe last December. So they do own it. This is the property line itself. We have worked through the legalities of building over a property line. And there's a lot more to it than I think is within the purview of this body. But you can see there is a proposed fire road. They do meet all setback requirements. There is a longer term discussion about doing the sewer water extension of EM Cops and then the roadway extension and providing a second entry point into the proposed addition. Staff is working on that with Lineage and the timing as it relates to bidding and getting this project in the ground. Again, this is the proposed addition. You can see phase 1 is here with the proposed office space, phase 2, which was constructed, I believe, in 2016, and then phase 3 in 2018, and now phase 4 here in 2020. This is just a close-up. You can see that they've got additional freezer space in the 2 warehouses, the additional loading docks. Here's the proposed fire road, and then the staging positions for the 19 dock doors. We do believe that the findings of the proposed site plan are consistent with the city's planned industrial district of the East Park Commerce Center. We would recommend approval. We are still working with them on some of the stormwater management side of things. There's some concern about the existing ponds have the capacity to take on the additional, but if they are not able to take on the additional impervious surface, that there would be additional stormwater ponds required, but we are working through that with the applicant, that they provide a landscaping plan consistent of the zoning code itself. And you can see that there are additional landscaping requirements within the approval. Again, staff would recommend approval with these 2 conditions.
Thank you very much. Any comments from anyone in attendance? Seeing none. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'd move to approve per staff recommendations and conditions.
Thank you, Commissioner Arntzen. Is there a second? Tell you what, I'll second.
Oh, okay.
All right. Any discussion there? Hearing no discussion, Director, would you please call the roll?
Weeza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arntzen.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted. Item number 11 is a request from the City of Stevens Point for a site plan review for the proposed improvements to Emerson Park with only 1 M. Consistent with Wisconsin Statute 62.23 sub 5. Director.
I apologize for my mistaken misspelling of Emerson Park, and I hope that President Johnson doesn't scold me. Emerson Park, which is at 1401 East Avenue, is proposed to receive several public park improvements as part of the park's master planning process. In May, the city's park board did review and approve the conceptual plan that's on this slide here. You can see that the east side of the property is used for more passive uses. It will be more as an open field. In the center of the property, you've got a park shelter with bathrooms. It should be noted that this shelter itself will actually have to go through the Historic Preservation Commission because it is a new structure within the Clark and Main Street Historic Preservation District. There's a playground area and swing set on the south side along Ellis Street. And then, of course, you have your multi-use tennis court, basketball court, and I believe there's pickleball in there as well. Kind of interesting is you have bags or cornhole facilities located here as well. 2 pedestrian access points, one off of Clark Street, one off of East Avenue. Unique to this park is that we do have 2 pull-in handicap stalls on northbound East Avenue. Typically, staff would not like to see something like this, but given the size of the park and its urban feel, there's going to be minimal usage of these stalls, and there's a lot of parking along the street. And again, this is an urban park. It's neighborhood park. The users here would need the handicap accessibility, especially for vans. And so, again, we typically wouldn't like to have direct pullouts into East Avenue or backouts into East Avenue, but we understand the request of this. We would recommend approval consistent with the findings outlined within the packet itself. Again, probably the biggest thing here is that the shelter and restroom facility will have to go through historic preservation. And so there's going to be some additional approval requirements ahead of the park staff, just to ensure that they are consistent with the design of the historic Clark and Main Street area. We would recommend approval of the site plan with that stipulation of the Historic Preservation and Design Review Commission. I believe Director Kramer is also on this call, and several members of the Friends of Emerson Park.
Thank you very much, Director. This has been a long time coming, well thought out, and I commend not only the Parks Director, past and present, but the Friends of Emerson Park, led by President Melissa Johnson as well. Director Kramer, did you have anything to add in regards to the site plan for the park?
Nothing to add. Just excited to have it on, considered for approval.
Thank you. President Johnson, as President of the Council or one of the founding members of the Emerson Park Friends, do you have anything to say?
I just want, mine is full of thank yous. So to Director Schrader and Director Kramer, this could not have happened without their help, and Rettler Corporation. The Friends of Emerson Park is a budding grassroots organization, community members, District 3 and District 5, mostly the Old Main Neighborhood Association, and the Jefferson School area. We are in the process of a capital campaign. We have a fund with the Community Foundation. If anyone is interested, just go to the Community Foundation and you can find us. Please feel free to give us any spare change you may have. But Rettler Corporation stepped up and gave us all of these in-kind design services, and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that they said they believed in this project. So thank you to Rettler Corporation. Thank you to all of the community members who replied to a survey. So the Friends of Emerson Park have been working on this design for about 2.5, 3 years. Tons of community input. And most recently, through the Parks Department, we issued another survey on the last of the design work. So this is truly a community project. The Friends of Emerson Park are going to be hitting the pavement looking for the funding to make this a reality. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, President Johnson. Any other comments from any members of the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication. I don't see anything in the chat. President Johnson, go ahead.
Sure, I'm just wondering, I thought I saw fellow Friends of Emerson Park board member Mike O'Meara on the call. I didn't know if you wanted to ask him if he wanted to add anything.
He is on the call and he is now unmuted. Mr. O'Meara, do you have anything to add? Definitely unmuted though. Regardless, nobody ever gets anything or does anything by themselves in a community like this. We all play a role, and I think it's important, and it says a lot about not just the Friends of Emerson Park and all the countless people that donated, but everybody who has put in the work, and something as small as the people that were driving by to see the little the soda bottle or water bottle artwork that was on there for a while, the many people that will be using it. I think this is a great, and I just got notice that from Director Kramer that Ginger is on the call from the Friends group as well. So I want to thank all of you for putting this together. This is going to be one of the centerpieces of our community. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the commissioners, and I will make the motion to adopt the site plan as presented. I'd be looking for a second.
Haynes will second.
Seconded by Commissioner Haynes. Any further discussion?
Mayor, I just have a quick comment.
Go ahead, Alder.
I just wonder why the drinking fountain is not called a bubbler.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
Well, kind of along that same vein, what are the designs in the middle of the wood chip area? Is that just symbolizing the equipment that's going to be there?
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
All right. I'm trying to get some artsy thing out of it and was having a tough time.
All right. Any other comments? Hearing none, commissioners, please take yourself off mute, and Director Kanowski, if you could please call the roll.
Weeza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0. Thank you all very much. That is approved. Now the fundraising starts. Start writing those checks. Powerball on Wednesday, right? All right. Item number 12 is on page 134 of your packets, and that's a request from the Redevelopment Authority of the City of Stevens Point to purchase 1009 2nd Street. Commissioners, you've done this before. State statute requires us to get a recommendation on any purchase of public property. This has already been brought up at the Redevelopment Authority. We are looking for a recommendation from the Plan Commission to proceed with the purchase through the Redevelopment Authority. Director Kanowski?
Nope, this is about it. So the Redevelopment Authority has been working with the property owner at 1009 2nd Street. It's the small, it was at one point an ice cream parlor, turned furniture store, turned small engine repair shop, turned something else. So we have been looking at creating and piecing together what I'll call a super block here. This is one of the last pieces that we need. Of course, what would continue to remain is Kim's Barrel Inn, which is the corner of Portage and 2nd. And at this time, the property owner there has no interest in selling to the city. So we would intend to demolish this building when the Belkey Lumber building is removed from the property for the proposal of work units by Wanta and Sons. Again, Redevelopment Authority has gone through this. We've been working on this behind closed doors for several months now. I'm very happy that we've come to a purchase price agreement and believe that it's the right move and the strategic decision and acquisition for the Redevelopment Authority for the super block redevelopment that's proposed. So staff would recommend approval. Redevelopment Authority would truly appreciate the approval.
Thank you, Director. Any comments from anyone in attendance? Okay. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Arnson. Seconded by Commissioner Haynes. Further discussion? Seeing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves. The director, please call the roll.
Weeza.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Arnson.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Haynes.
Aye.
Hoppy.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
7-0.
7-0, that is adopted, and we will relay that information to the Redevelopment Authority. Item number 13 is the May 2020 monthly report from the Economic Development Team. Director?
Thank you, Mayor. I will pull up the report when I can figure out which screen my mouse is on. Okay, so what should be on your screen right now is the May 2020 report. I just want to give a major shout out to my staff for putting this together. It is the 1st of June, and so we typically have a few more days to put this together, but the rock stars that I do have within this department were able to quick throw this together. So thanks to Maria and Mark and others. So as you can see, our total permits are actually staying fairly consistent with 2019 as it relates to residential and commercial permits themselves. And so very happy to see this. You'll see the valuation itself is down. We're seeing a lot of permits for home remodeling, things of that nature. Again, we believe that a lot of that has to do with folks being home right now. So while the valuation is down and the permit collection is down, the number of permits is up. So a lot of fences, a lot of roofing permits, things of that nature coming through. One single family permit was issued on Frederick Street, and then the plumbing and HVAC for the Berkshire Senior Housing Project was issued. April will be up as we did receive the building permit for the Delta Dental headquarters. So with that, would recommend approval as presented.
Thank you very much, Director, and thank you to your staff as well. Are there any questions for the Director?
No.
Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the report and place it on file.
Cooper, so moved.
Moved by Cooper. We have a second.
Haynes, second.
Seconded by Haynes. Any further discussion? Nothing in the comments. We'll just do a voice vote on this. All those in favor of accepting the report and placing it on file, please unmute yourselves and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. And finally, the staff update. Director, or are you going to turn this over to Adam? Throw him in the fire.
I'll keep it short, sweet, to the point. As alluded to earlier, Adam Kuhn has started. He's been a very welcomed addition to the team, and I thank him for doing a lot of the legwork and really kind of going into the fire and starting to put these plan commission reports together. You know, you learn a lot quicker when you just get thrown into it, when you don't ease yourself into it, or that's my philosophy now. So I appreciate his help and again, staff's help. Community development continues to be closed to the general public. We're actually going through some office remodeling right now, and so we should have our full staff back mid to late June at this point. So I don't have anything else other than we're staying busy as all heck here in community development. So
perfect. Thank you very much. And with that, our agenda is exhausted. I want to thank you all for your patience again tonight, and we are adjourned at 7:56.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.